want to hear about these motherfuckers. It's time to go. All I want to do is fucking eat.
We're not practicing to beat somebody. We're practicing to beat everybody.
Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide for 4 quarters. They got to see us in our house for 4 quarters. They got to look us in the eye for 4. This is about us and our family and our house. This is about us. This is our mentality. We ain't backing down. We ain't running. Set a tone, send a message. This is our house. Physical toughness wins in football now. And if you in this room, you got it. And if you come in here, you better believe in it. Because this physical toughness, it's what makes the difference. Elite focus. That's all I'm doing. The guy across from me, I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack. You take that helmet and you strike them. And you strike them and you strike them. That's how you get respect.
I am going to pick shit out of them. Physically, I want to break them.
Georgia Bulldog fans, welcome back into this week's edition of How About That DAWGSCAST. My blood's running hot tonight. I'm feeling pretty doggone good. I'm feeling good because of where this Georgia Bulldogs football program is right now and where I think they're headed. I'm feeling pretty good because all that talk, all those whispers, all that noise saying that Georgia is not the 21 team, not the 22 team. And if they aren't generationally good, then they must not be good at all. I am fired up because these dogs are in the middle of a run right now where they have the chance to show everybody that maybe they're not the 21 team or the 22 team, but they still might be the best team in the country. And I feel really good because I don't have to just say it. The boys get to go prove it. I put it on the thumbnail this week. Lock the gates. Do you remember that phrase? That was the message prior to Tennessee last season. Tennessee rolled into town, the number 1 team in the country. And the coaches told the players, too late now, lock the gates. We are about to show everybody what we're about. I think that's where we are with this Georgia football team right now. This entire season, I have spent my time in various forms of video here, on the podcast, here on this platform, on my other shows, just gently trying to remind people that football is a game of evolution, of growth, of development. And I know in today's TikTok world, that's not what people want to see, especially those who are, how can I say it delicately, new to Dog Nation. I mean, it's not your fault if all you've ever seen is Georgia on the kind of historical run that the University of Georgia, the SEC, and college football as a whole has rarely seen. It's not your fault if all you know is absolute domination. But that doesn't mean that it's always been that way. Doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. So when those of us that have been fans of the Georgia Bulldogs for decades, literally, it's in our blood. I have given sweat and blood and effort to my university. Grady School of Journalism, class of 1998, that's me. So yes, I'm invested. Yes, I've been at games for decades. So when I say appreciate these times, don't be so critical because it's not exactly the way you think it should be. I don't know, maybe listen to us. There are a lot of us out here. We welcome you into Dog Nation. We want you to be here. Just let's not overreact. Let the season play out, because when the season plays out, you get to moments like this one. You get to moments where it doesn't matter what anybody else says. Now, to the team, to the coaches, it's never mattered. Let's be clear. It has never mattered. My voice on this microphone has never mattered to them. That's the way it should be. But it matters to us, the fans, those of us that are invested, where everyone is doubting or dismissing or trying to downplay the literally historic success that the program is having right now. And when you get to this point in the season, when you get to November and you start playing for crowns, if you go out on the field and you handle your business, there's nothing that anybody can say. Nothing. You've got nothing. And as the last 2 years have taught me, having been a fan for so long and not being in that position, the last 2 years have taught me that simply watching people flail wildly for a reason to try to punch a hole in your happiness, hell, that's almost as much fun as winning the championships or watching the teams win. So that's where fandom gets to be a whole lot of fun. But this podcast is not about all that. But I thought that was a pretty good way to sort of set the stage for what this podcast is about. I mean, we generally don't step up here and do week in, week out previews, in-depth breakdowns. You could get that stuff from other people here in the Dog Nation ecosphere. And some of those people do a really good job. But that's not why I do this show. I do this show to sort of just share my perspective on what I see beyond the X's and O's, what I've seen from being around championship teams over decades, and what I feel when I'm around them or when I see them play or act a certain way or something like that. Here's what I think I know about this team that is currently 9-0, by the way. And not the smoothest 9-0 you've ever seen, but for the fourth time during his tenure at the University of Georgia, Kirby Smart has this team to 9-0, 6-0 inside the SEC, and on the precipice of yet another SEC Eastern Championship and another trip to Atlanta, where they'll take on the champions of the West with hopes of winning the conference and getting back into the college football playoff. There have been ups and downs. There have been a few misfires. There have been things that we certainly didn't expect to see. Yet here we are with everything in front of us. Here's what I think I've learned. At first, I wasn't quite sure how to frame it. Because you hear people talk about Georgia's bored, or they're playing with their food, or if Georgia focuses on you, that's when you better look out. It's some variant of that. And I don't think that's completely off base. I think there's something to it, but it's not the straightforward A to B that you might think it is. No, I listen to Kirby, I listen to the players, I watch them practice and play, and I see that, and I believe that absolutely they do not take any opponent for granted. They absolutely are only looking 1 week ahead and how they can improve their craft. I don't doubt them at all for that. But the fact is, when you're part of a system that has such a high level of expectations, not for perfection, but for excellence, and those two things are not the same. And I think when you're in the position that Georgia's in, it's important to understand the difference. Perfection is unattainable. But the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And you can stand on the excellence in your performance every day, every time out on the field, every time between the hedges. Every time you put on that helmet, you can stand for excellence and represent who you are, what you and your team are about. And when you think about it that way, I think the thing that I've learned is that this football team, they absolutely need a challenge. They absolutely need a little bit of an extra juice, a little bit of an extra push. I think this team has shown us so far this year that they are at their best when someone splits their lip, when they taste their own blood just a little bit. Have you ever seen it? Have you ever been watching a boxing match or an MMA fight or even a football game? Have you ever seen it where you know that at least one of the two participants, they're really good? And then out of nowhere, they catch an overhand right or they catch a spinning heel kick. And they're like, well, I didn't see that one coming. I mean, I know I'm pretty good. That one that got my attention. Splits their lip and then they kind of taste it a little bit. They kind of look through their eyebrows and get that sideways grin going. They're like, all right, here we go. And then they go to lay waste to whoever that was that happened to be in front of them that day. I think that's what this team is. Again, I'm not taking anything away from their normal preparation or saying that they disrespect their opponents. I'm just saying that when they get a little stung, that it just makes them that much better. I personally really, really like that because I'm familiar with that. I know what that looks like. And then you have Ole Miss rolling into town this week. We got to the bye week. The best player in America was down. The hated Gators in a game that nobody can ever truly predict was on the docket. And then we had what we knew was going to be a gauntlet of good competition following that Florida game. Florida got their attention early. Well, they had Georgia's attention. Then they put one on the board on them early. And then Georgia got after them. Missouri hit them early. Hung around. Was doing some things that made Georgia feel, like, wait a second. Especially in the run game. And then Georgia rose up and made a play. You've heard Coach Smart say it over and over and over this year. This team is resilient, and they will not quit. That's the image I have in my head. The dogs are out there playing. They get stung a little bit. They taste a little bit of their own blood. They get that split lip. And then they just answer the bell, just like they've done for the last 2 years. And this week, and it's another week, another team. And it seems, maybe it's just me, but it seems that all we hear is, this is the one that's going to get you. Every week, Georgia's on upset alert, it seems. And again, I'm not trying to discount Missouri, Ole Miss, not at all. It just seems like those voices are louder. Now, the television guy in me knows, well, that's because they're trying to get people to watch the games. But for you and I, the Georgia Bulldog fans, we're like, what do you mean we're on upset alert? Again, I think Ole Miss is a good team. I know and I had been saying that Missouri is a good football team. Ole Miss is dangerous just because of who and what they are. I think Georgia knows that. But I also think that just like every time before, this unit is going to rise up and meet the challenge. I heard a statistic today that got my attention. And I know it's a little indirect. But when you think of Ole Miss, what do you think of? I think of Lane Kiffin. I think of offense. I think of, just, I don't know, the circus that is around him. And I don't mean circus necessarily in a bad way here. I just mean that there's usually a lot of noise going on and, they do some flashy things. But the essence of what that offense that I think of is the Briles offense. And whether you're talking about Alabama, Kirby Smart, Coach Saban, or Georgia, Kirby Smart, whenever that Briles offense has been paired up against those defenses, they are 1-13. So that leads me to believe that there's a little bit of I've unlocked it going on in Athens this weekend. Pair that with the fact that as Lane Kiffin tried to tell us all week, Georgia has elite talent paired with elite coaching and elite game day atmosphere, plus college game days coming into town. The people around Ole Miss feel like they're playing with house money. Take your shot. But I think, once again, that this Georgia team is equipped, especially between the ears, to handle this moment and handle their business. I think that's one of the biggest questions about Ole Miss as we move closer and closer to the game is, can they rise to the moment? Because there are literally people talking about how this is the biggest game in the history of the program. And if they happen to win it, there will be no doubt that it is the biggest program win in school history because of what it's going to mean to them. So you take a team that, let's be honest, has had a record over the past few seasons of falling off the table, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the season. And now all of a sudden they're under the bright lights the way they're going to be this Saturday. I think it's fair to question whether or not they're going to be able to handle that moment. Now, with all that said, I do believe that Ole Miss has a trio that could play most anywhere. I think Judkins is the best running back in the SEC. I might say he's the best running back in the country, at least for my liking. Jackson Dart has proven to be more than capable. He's having a wonderful season for them at quarterback. And the addition of Trey Harris at wide receiver gives them a bit of a three-headed monster. Now, I don't profess to be an expert on Ole Miss or what they do schematically or anything like that. But I know that they have talented players in key positions. What I don't know is whether or not, much like we didn't know about Missouri, they can come into Athens, take on the game day atmosphere that we know they're going to see, and fight it out in the box with the gates locked behind them for 4 quarters and get out of there with a W. I'm on record as saying I don't believe they will, but I think that's what the game is going to come down to ultimately, is can they last for the duration of the fight that it's going to be in Athens on Saturday. I look forward to seeing it. One of the things I wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight on this weekend that I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about this year is Georgia's secondary, the defensive backs. Not so much in breaking down how they play or anything like that. We're just going to start with the baseline, though, that today, 9 games into the season, Georgia's secondary as a whole, as a unit, is considered to be one of the very best across the country, if not the best. So you have to begin by looking at who the starters are, right? Who makes up that secondary? Well, that would be All-American and All-American candidate this year, Malachi Starks, who was a freshman All-American last year, Kamari Lassiter, who has played outstanding this season and did a wonderful job last weekend against Missouri. Once they moved him into the slot and said, "You've got this guy," he put the clamps on. You look at the other corner, Dalen Everett gets a lot of snaps over there, as does Julian Humphrey. And you look at safety, well, that's just Javon Bullard back there, the MVP of the college football playoff run last year, 2-time MVP, defensive MVP. And then there's all the guys that are rolling in there. There's the guys on the roster that are competing every day, that are huge contributors on the special teams unit and are just itching to get on the field and show what they can do, but they can't beat out the guys that are out there. Guys like A.J. Harris, just one name. Jonel Aguero, there's another. And then you look at the recruiting classes at who's coming, and there's a fair shot that at least one of those kids that are coming in this year will have a real chance to start next year. I just feel absolutely giddy about the defensive backfield at the University of Georgia right now. And I just don't know that they've been getting the kind of attention that they deserve. Maybe not attention. How about appreciation? Take Dalen Everett, for example. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that I'm breaking down his game film, okay? But Everett was on Luther Burden when he gave up that early touchdown. Go back and watch it again. There was a very smooth push off in the end zone to get that room that allowed Burden to catch the ball. But Everett was right there and attempting to play the ball even after that fact. There were a couple of back shoulder throws to Theo Weiss late in the game. Everett was right there. His arm was literally in between the wide receiver's arms and caught up in the mix as he made the catch. The thing about the back shoulder throw, and then people were giving him a hard time, by the way, Everett, for not making a play or doing a thing. Listen, that is one of the hardest plays in football to defend, and you literally cannot cover it any better than he had it covered. Sometimes the other guy makes a play. Remember that stuff I say about football being, a game? Like, it's not a video game, it's a real thing. Sometimes the other people make a play. Julian Humphrey got in the game. Once they moved Lassiter into the slot, Humphrey took a lot of snaps at Lassiter's position, normal position. He got called for what I think was a BS PI, but then made play after play, locking his guy down. He was feeling pretty good about it after the game, and literally, I have just been waiting for him to make his move. This past weekend might have been that opportunity to really show what he can do in the game. Whether it's Everett, who made that phenomenal play earlier this season at Auburn, whether it's Lassiter, who shut down Burden this weekend against Mizzou, whether it's Humphrey, who came off the bench, took his turn in the rotation, and just became another top-tier cornerback for the Dogs, that defensive secondary is nasty. Oh, yeah, Starks and Bullard on the back end. I haven't even mentioned Dan Jackson, who's a valuable part of that unit. The thing that gets me so excited about that unit is not only are they really, really good in what they do right now in the pass game and how Georgia uses them, but they bring them in pressures, which helps the Dogs be multiple and exotic. When they need to bring a little heat on the quarterback, they can do it, and they can trust those guys on the back end to cover. Notice I didn't even mention Tyke Smith at the star position. I mean, Tyke he's the team leader in interceptions. He took the move last weekend, right, to let Lassiter move into the slot. And then he came in later in the game and had a big sack. That unit is incredible. And I, for one, just wanted to put it on record how much I appreciate their effort and their skill level. The better they are on the back end, the better that pass rush is going to be on the front end. Because, again, it allows Georgia to do some exotic things here or there when they need to. Or get that extra beat, make the quarterback hold the ball an extra half second so that those monsters like Jalen Walker coming off the edge, or Damon Wilson coming off the other edge, or Michael Williams can get home. TID, so he can get home. Remember, y'all, I'm an old defensive guy at heart, and to see a good pass rush, to see the Dogs get after the quarterback the way they are, that just, it gets me all kind of fired up. And as an old defensive lineman, I fully appreciate how the front seven works hand in hand with the back end. And in case you hadn't thought about those guys back there, I wanted to take a second and just give them a few roses and let it be known what quality work I think they're doing. Because, again, it's not just what they do in the pass game. These guys are winning in Millennial, Oklahoma. When the ball gets spit outside, they flow. When it gets to cover down, the ball breaks outside, they flow to the football as a unit. We saw Bullard as just a prime example of blowing up the middle of the field. They're a physical presence in the middle of the field when the receivers come across the middle. We've seen Kamari Lassiter time after time attack those bubble screens, those edge screens, and blow those up out there in space. They tackle well, they cover, they're hard-nosed, they're team-oriented. Again, just roses for the Georgia Bulldogs secondary here in 2023. I could probably go on, but I just didn't want to, I've probably said plenty. I wanted to put it out there how much I appreciate their work this year. Now, there's a lot that's happened, as there is every week. This is college football. There's never not news. But, of course, we are in the time of the year where people are paying attention around the country and starting to sort of figure out who's going to be in the college football playoff. So when we take a look at what the committee decided to do this week, you'll notice that much like I said ahead of this reveal, they were going to do a whole lot of nothing. I expected absolutely nothing to change from week 1 to week 2, week 10 to week 11 here in the CFP rankings. And, of course, that's exactly what happened. The Buckeyes are still 1, Georgia's 2, Michigan's sitting there at 3, Florida State is still there at 4. Now, I don't have a whole lot to say about this because, again, the only one of these I'm really concerned about is the last one. But I will say that of the top 4, Ohio State, although much better defensively, has not been overly impressive. And if Georgia handles their business against Ole Miss this weekend, I think that's the point where you might see Georgia move into the number 1 position. Michigan has their first game of the year this year, and I don't mean to discredit Rutgers or UNLV for that matter, but those would be their 2 best wins to date. It's not who you play, it's how you play. And if you look at what Michigan's done on the field, then they deserve to be considered one of the top teams in the country. You don't have to have any particular ranking to be able to decide that's a good football team if you know football, right? If you've watched enough, you know what good looks like. Florida State, though, I'm not feeling great about them at 4. And I'll just say, outside of one half of football against a 3-loss LSU team, Florida State hasn't done much that makes me stand up and take notice. Now, I know Washington beat Oregon. I personally think Oregon is one of the best teams in the country. I think if they played again at Eugene or on a neutral field, I believe Oregon beats Washington. At the end of the day, I believe Oregon will represent the Pac-12 as their champion. So there's going to be some movement here. And obviously, if Alabama plays their string out and wins, they're going to get to Atlanta, which is what I predicted. And it will be Georgia and Alabama for the SEC title. So that's going to work itself out too. But Michigan has Penn State this weekend, another top 10 matchup across the country, which will be over hours before the Dogs kick it off. So we'll have a little clarity there. We'll be able to forecast what we think is going to happen. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to consider. But at the end of the day, again, the rankings don't matter until that last one. So I did want to bring it up and mention it and talk about it. But as we are fond of saying, it will all work itself out on the field. Now, one thing that I would like to bring to your attention, let's just stay in this look here. This statistic blew my mind when I saw it this weekend. Not because I haven't lived it. I've been there for every one of these. But it still got my attention. Kirby Smart's record at the University of Georgia up until November 8th of 2020 was 48-14. Kirby Smart's record on November 8th, 2023 is 90-15. 90-15. The Dogs have lost one game in 3 years. So when we talk about what Kirby Smart has built, when we talk about a team knowing how to win, a team being resilient and being tough and being of the makeup that will never allow them to quit, you see it in this graphic. Nothing illustrates it better. One loss in 3 years. That magic, that secret sauce, that something extra and intangible, that is what every college coach, every football coach, every coach of any sport, anywhere ever wants. Obviously, there were great players that made this happen. Why did they choose to come to the University of Georgia? Because of Kirby Smart and his staff recruiting them to get there. You only win because you have great players. Okay, why do you think we have great players? It's because of the head coach. It's because of the product on the field. It almost leaves me speechless. Like, I don't know what else to say. The numbers literally stand for themselves. "42 wins and 1 loss in exactly 3 years. I don't know if Ole Miss finds themselves in the game in the third quarter this Saturday night and looks across the field and sees a team with that sort of confidence, belief, and resilience looking back at them. I just don't know that Ole Miss is going to be able to stand up and take that on. Someday, Georgia's consecutive winning streak, which now stands at 26 games, will come to an end. I, for one, will not be sad. I mean, yes, nobody likes to lose. But I, for one, will just stand back and appreciate this number that we're looking at here and what I've seen over the last 3 years. It truly, truly is an incredible kind of thing. It is the envy of the college football world. There is absolutely no doubt that the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart is the standard in college football today, and that the road to another championship for the foreseeable future runs directly through Athens, Georgia. What a sentence to be able to say. It's mind-blowing, really. One of the things that I was a little late getting cranked up this year, but has become a very popular piece of content for the people that follow us over on the Facebook page, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and of course here on YouTube, is the Beast of the Week. Every week after Georgia finishes their games, I throw open nominations for who you think dominated the game for the Dogs that week. And there's going to be a Beast of the Week regardless of whether Georgia wins or loses. And it's always fun to see who you, Dog Nation, tell me should be the Beast of the Week. This week, as all weeks, we got a number of very, very strong candidates that needed to be considered for Beast of the Week. But as you can see, this came down to a week where I chose 3. One was Kamari Lassiter for his performance this past Saturday against Missouri. Jalen Walker was another because he's been downright unblockable since coming off the bye. And of course, Nazir Stackhouse, who made the play of the game at a key moment in the fourth quarter with his interception. Should have been a touchdown. I still can't believe that it worked out that he didn't get in the end zone. But I always like to take a second, look back at the Beasts of the Week. So always look forward to that. If you're not following me on these pages, I hope you'll join us because I'll always throw up the moment when nominations are opening up, and you can let me know who you think should be the Beast of the Week for Georgia's last game. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about the DBs this week, and they had a huge impact on this last week's game. I mean, not only we mentioned Nazir Stackhouse and his interception, but Javon Bullard iced the game on the back end. And I'll tell you, that's the thing I really enjoy about this unit, this defensive unit, especially with the number of young players that are getting an opportunity to play and that now will have to play because the injury bug just seems to love us this year and won't leave us alone. So we know we're going to be without Jamon Dumas-Johnson for a couple of weeks at least, and we're going to see some of those young freshmen, some of the same players that I pointed out in a video before the season began, saying keep an eye on these people to be making an impact once we get down into November. Damon Wilson was one, Janelle Aguero was one, and Raylan Wilson was another. And after coming back off of that knee injury that he suffered in camp or at the tail end of camp, finally back to being fully healthy, he is going to get to play some, and I expect to see a lot of good things from 5. Now, he is a freshman. There is no free pass under Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, and Will Muschamp. If you go into the game, they expect you to play at the level that Georgia plays. So just because you're young doesn't mean that you get a free pass if you're going to bust something. With that said, they're still young. So you might see them get caught in the wrong place here or there. I mean, that's going to happen. But I am looking forward to seeing them out there playing because I think that Raylan Wilson, along with those other people I mentioned, there's just the future is very, very bright on the defensive side of the ball in Athens. Some good news, even though he's been injured and has missed some time, Brock Bowers has made the list as a semifinalist for the John Mackey Award this season. In half a season, he had shown his importance to not only the Dogs, but his status as the best tight end in the country remains unchanged. Will he be able to bring home the award again because he missed some time? I don't know. But the fact that he is still alive for the John Mackey Award is a good thing, because there is no doubt that he is the best tight end in the country, for sure. Now, with Bowers in mind, since we just mentioned him, I think I would be remiss if I did not at least mention that there are whispers in the wind that Georgia could be getting back some key pieces this weekend against Ole Miss. The first and most probable would be Amarius Mims, the first round talent at tackle that Georgia's been without for the last 6-7 weeks, could be back in the lineup this weekend against Ole Miss. That would be a good thing. You're never going to take a player of his caliber out and say you're better for it, much like with Brock Bowers. So if Amarius is back, that just adds that much more depth to what is an offensive line that is continuing to grow and get better. That's a good thing. There are even whispers that because this is senior night in Athens, the last home game of the season, Brock Bowers might decide to suit up. Now, I am not going to go so far as to say that I expect him to play. I could see him dressing out just because of the kind of night it's going to be in Athens. And this very well could be his last opportunity to put on the red and black between the hedges. So, if he's in his uniform, I won't be shocked. But I will not go so far as to say that I think he's going to come back. We know that Brock has been dying to get back. I said it the day after the event happened, or 2 days after the event happened in Nashville, that I fully expected to see him play for Georgia again, because that's just the way he's wired. But this, just 4 weeks later, well, I mean, I'm not trying to build the man up to be more than he is, but that would be something that we haven't seen. If he does play, you will not hear me second guess him or the coaching staff for that decision, because I know that he will not be out there unless he is 100% ready to go. That might be Kirby's hardest job come Saturday, is keeping 19 off the field. If he's as close to getting back as people seem to think he is. Again, I for one don't expect him to play. I would not be surprised if he dressed out, though. So there are more rumblings out there. But those two, which I think is worth pointing out, that Georgia has now defeated the Florida Gators and the number 12 ranked Missouri Tigers without two players that are projected to go in the first round of next spring's draft. 2-0. Mission, team, me. It's about the culture and the superstructure of the program that Kirby Smart has built. That's why Georgia's at the level they are at. And it should be appreciated, and I, for one, do. I appreciate it very, very much. This is going to be a fight in Athens on Saturday, any way you cut it. And as a fan, we all expect our team to show up, play with the appropriate amount of get after their ass, be tough, stay in the game, do their very best. We expect the coaches to make good decisions, give our guys the best chance to win. But I got to say, before this season started, people looked at Georgia's home schedule, and if you weren't indifferent or yawning when you looked at it, not me, but generic college football person across the country, if you weren't bored by Georgia's home schedule, well, let me say it this way, especially season ticket holders who are putting down their hard-earned money to go see the back-to-back national champions play. If you weren't disappointed in the home schedule for Georgia this year, I'd have to say I would have been shocked. But here in November, we look at it and we see that it is not at all that schedule. The early part of the year was the early part of the year, but now it's winning time. Championships are on the line, and season ticket holders at Georgia have had now consecutive weeks with marquee matchups that absolutely affect the outcome of the SEC and the college football playoff. So I think you have to be pretty happy about that. And I'm just going to say it, Dog Nation, now is your time to shine. It is time to show up and show out. We have all of these expectations for what the team and the coaches should do. But when everything is on the line, a night game, a top 10 matchup, and crowns to be grasped, Dog Nation has to show up, make themselves part of the game, and impact the outcome of this game on Saturday night in Athens. The head coach has asked you for it. The players have asked you for it. I am asking you for it. Do your job. Just like the coaches said. Show up, be loud, have a great time, and propel this Georgia Bulldogs team to yet another SEC East championship. That's our job. Are you ready? We ask the players, give us your best. I think it's fair to say that Dog Nation should do the same. So that's my 2 cents worth. A little bit of a recap over what happened with Mizzou. A little bit of a look ahead to what's going to happen with Ole Miss. And a little bit of my personal perception and insight about what this team is. A team that wants the challenge. A team that I believe is ready for the challenge. A team that I expect to rise to the challenge once again and win yet another SEC East championship. Once we get to Atlanta, you take your best shot to win the conference. You get that done, you're back in the college football playoff, most likely as the 1 seed, and headed to the Sugar Bowl in Louisiana to take your best shot at winning that elusive 3rd consecutive national championship. How about them Dogs? Until next time, enjoy the games. Enjoy a great college football weekend. And go Dogs!
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.